It's fire sale season approaching, the NFL trade deadline after 9 weeks of NFL action, save one Monday nighter. Dennis Allen out, Luke Getsy out with the Raiders, tons of great games with the Lions over the Packers, Rams tightening up the West with the win in OT over the Seahawks, and a whole lot more coming up on today's chock-full edition of Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love and appreciate all of our everydayers out there. Thanks for stopping by. And to all the new listeners, subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you are listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode as we cover the NFL for you every single day here on Peacock and Williamson at the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode of P&W brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And apologies to some listeners out there. We always on Mondays try to recap every game, but we got big news now with the firing of a couple coaches, one head coach in the NFL, and some bigger games that we're going to spend more time on. So we might gloss over some of the NFL action from Sunday. There was a ton of great stuff, though, to get into, but we've got to start with the New Orleans Saints now and their loss to the Carolina Panthers. And what does it say about where the Panthers are at, by the way, first, because we can talk about the dumpster fire that is the New Orleans Saints right now and how this team is built. And we'll have to talk even more about it later on in the week with the firing of head coach Dennis Allen. Now he's out in New Orleans. But what does it say about the Carolina Panthers when you're so bad that if you beat the other team, they fire their head coach after the game?
Right. And some of this is going to have to spill into tomorrow, but there's just so much going on right now. And it's too many big injuries. Chris Olave with the Saints, coaching firings. We got guys hurdling other guys, even though their back is turned to them, going backwards in crazy fashion. We got a trade deadline right around the corner. And I found it interesting because one thing I was kind of harping on last week was a lot of the really awful teams, these two included, hadn't played other awful teams. So two of the best games were Titans, Patriots, Saints, Panthers. And I think it does speak volumes that if you lose to that team, that's the most awful of all the awful teams. Yeah, you should be in trouble. And I never thought he was a great head coach or a real creative hire to begin with. But that being said, the chickens have come home to roost or whatever that is for the Saints. I mean, just in terms of the way they've built this team and, in terms of age and all those things and injuries, it's just not a winning formula for anybody.
And we have to talk more about this tomorrow when we have a little bit more time, as we'll record one more episode before the trade deadline is officially done. I'm sure we'll get some movement.
There might be others too.
Tomorrow's episode, maybe other fired coaches as well. But looking at this game specifically, Alvin Kamara, 29 carries, 155 yards. He's a guy that should be on the move to another team right now. And
they're extending him
a few weeks ago, which was a head scratcher at the time too. So it's like the big thing with the Saints, and Saints fans should be screaming at themselves, what the hell are you doing? Because this is not like it was something that you didn't see coming.
Send them to the Chiefs for whatever they'll give them to you. Give to you. I mean, they'll give you something, and they would be awesome with Kamara. I just don't understand the bill.
I guess it doesn't matter. Does the cap matter anymore? I guess we can save some of this stuff for tomorrow. But you just kicked that can with Kamara, which tells
that's what I mean. Like you should have done it weeks ago instead of extending them. Right.
Yeah. And all that's lost in this 23-22 win for the Panthers over the Saints. I mean, again, so bad team. The Saints were favored by a touchdown going into this game against the Panthers. Yeah. So, and this is a division rival as well that goes and beats you. But I think lost in this is that Bryce Young maybe didn't look terrible in this game, right? So maybe this is where the thing starts to turn. The worm turns maybe for the Panthers, and you're looking at, okay, we just beat and look, I mean, Bryce Young's line is not good still. It's 16 of 26 for 171 yards, a touchdown and interception, but it wasn't a disaster. He didn't look worse than Derek Carr necessarily on the other side, and showed some okay things. And maybe you start to build if you're the Panthers now, and this is we start to turn things around. We're building starting this week, and the Saints are even in worse trouble than we are potentially starting in 2025.
Like, you could consider this a loss, as we often do for the Panthers, because they lost draft position. But if it's the beginning of the remainder of this season looks promising for Bryce Young, and we want to give him another year, then it's worth it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, okay, I remember this guy that we drafted, and we have a line around him, and he's not throwing to Deontay. Speaking of which, no Deontay Johnson, no Chris Olave. The two dudes, I just read this in a fantasy column, David Moore for Carolina and Mason Tipton for New Orleans, were the respective leaders in routes run for this game. Like, come on, man. What are we doing? Probably already.
They'll look fondly on the Mason Tipton era of the New Orleans. 3 targets, 0 catches, by the way, for Mason Tipton.
Out there running wind sprints. Yep.
And one of the things that's gone well for the Carolina Panthers recently, Chuba Hubbard, he had a couple touchdowns in this one, 72 yards on 15 carries. They're going to get Jonathan Brooks back, I think, probably next week, potentially. He's been practicing. So, they might be able to run the ball a little bit and help protect young Bryce Young the rest of the season. So we'll see how that goes. But, clearly two of the worst.
I apologize. I could paint the picture of the rookie running back, Brooks, behind a good line, a developing quarterback throwing to Leggett and Coker, and go, okay, I can kind of see a light at the end of the tunnel offensively. I mean, I'm straining.
And according to Ian Rappaport, assistant head coach, special teams coordinator Darren Rizzi is expected to be the new interim coach for New Orleans Saints there.
So brighter days ahead.
Yeah, we'll see if
they'll be great now.
Things around. Let's see if they get the interim bump there with the Saints. Another firing in the NFL as well. This is offensive coordinator Luke Getsy, someone you know and have known personally in the past. And he's been having a rough go, and he didn't even get a half a season to figure this thing out with pretty poor personnel. With the rookie tight end aside, Luke Getsy is now out, and Antonio Pierce said he felt the need to make a change, and it looks like former Washington offensive coordinator Scott Turner is a logical candidate, according to Tom Pelissero, to take over as play caller for the Raiders, whoever is at quarterback, whoever is catching passes for that football team after the trade deadline.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it can't hurt. I mean, hey, I'm rooting for Luke, but I mean, their offense isn't good, and they traded their best player on that side of the ball. Everything goes to Myers and Bowers. Understandably, they've had about the worst running game in the league, probably the worst quarterback situation in the league. But I'm starting to think the Bengals might be back. Their defense over the last month or so has gone from garbage to respectable. Burrow's almost playing like an MVP. Higgins wasn't out there, but Mike Gesicki did the Higgins stuff. Bengals are back.
Gesicki doing work in the end zone. Joe Burrow 5 touchdown passes in this one, and they crawl back. And look, I don't think you should make grand conclusions about the Bengals for beating the Raiders or firing people right there. They're in a bad position right now, and they're right there with the Saints and the Panthers as the worst teams in the NFL. But the Bengals are 4-5 now and climbing back to respectability. And then next week have a chance to get to 500, and then you're fighting for a wild card spot. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done, and we'll see what happens on the defensive side of the ball. And apparently, I think the Bengals have made 2 trades in the last 30 years or something crazy.
Yeah,
adding people midseason, and they're shopping to add. I think right now is where the Bengals are, according to reports.
I could buy that. I mean, they're still a talented team with a great quarterback.
Yep. All right, a whole lot more to get to, including the Detroit Lions, who defeated division rival and probably their biggest competition in the NFC North, the Green Bay Packers. There was an OT NFC West game for the Rams, who are back in it in the NFC side of things, and a whole lot more coming up from Week 9 Sunday of the NFL that was. Today's episode of Peacock Williamson is brought to you by Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up all the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rate may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. And when you're getting ready to watch Monday Night Football, maybe Week 10 NFL action is starting to percolate in your brain, Prize Picks is the place to play daily fantasy sports, and Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the action for over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. And it could not be simpler. All you do is you pick 2 or more players at Prize Picks, and you pick more or less than on those Prize Picks projections, and join over 10 million users when you sign up today and get a special offer. And for example, Jamar Chase, more than 79.5 receiving yards, or Patrick Mahomes for more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. You're not playing against those other 10 million users. You're just playing against the stat projections at Prize Picks. So sign up today and download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prize Picks. Again, that is code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup at Prize Picks. Run your game. The Detroit Lions just strengthening their position atop our personal power rankings, Matt. We already had them at number 1, and I see no reason to change that after the NFL action on Sunday. The 7-1 now Lions defeat the Packers at Green Bay. Wet weather, 24-14. Now, Jordan Love did not look like he was 100%, clearly wasn't 100%, and that might have hurt him, and he made some bad plays in this game. The Packers now 6-3. I love what Dan Campbell said, though, after the game. He said, we're built to win this kind of game. We might play in a dome, but we're built in a way that we can go beat anybody, anywhere, and clearly the Lions backed that up, and I think a really important win, obviously, for the Lions to get a couple-game lead on everybody and really positioning themselves to be that 1 seed in the NFC.
Yeah, that was my big takeaway, too. A couple of big takeaways were, strangely, this was the first game the Lions played not in a dome this year, and I think they only have like 1 more. But they're the team better suited for it. They can play any way you want. Goff, I used to consider him a fair weather quarterback. The ball basically never hit the ground, even though he didn't put up huge stats. They ran the ball well. They're physical on both lines of scrimmage. But if I were the Packers, I wouldn't look at this like, man, we can't hang with those guys. Like, the weather hurt them more than it hurt the Lions, in my opinion, because of Jordan Love's groin. That would be a really difficult injury when you're a mobile player to play on a soft, wet surface. And his receivers had too many drops, and he threw a bad pick 6 that, kind of sealed the deal. I mean, it was definitely the play of the game.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was Green Bay's best day. Here's my point.
Yeah, it wasn't. And I think they would play them better later in the season, even if it's potentially in Detroit, right, with a more healthy quarterback. And I think that would potentially look different. But important for the Lions to handle their business, and it sounds like they're on the cusp. And I haven't seen it official this morning that Zadarius Smith might be joining the pass rush there for the Detroit Lions, and clearly they were a team that's going to be shopping for a pass rusher with Aiden Hutchinson out, and so that's an important piece for them to add here at the trade deadline and keep going through the second half of the season. A quick note on that, Jared Goff. So Jared Goff has completed 30 consecutive passes to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Goff is leading the NFL in completion percentage, but St. Brown is also leading the NFL in catch percentage, and like clearly, Amon-Ra St. Brown isn't the highest air yards receiver, right? But it just goes to show you how efficient they're playing football right now in the pass game, and obviously they're able to run the heck out of the ball.
And by today's NFL standards, those two have played a lot of football together. I mean, it's not Montana and Rice for decades or whatever, but guys move around a lot. He had a beautiful touchdown pass. It's a great connection.
It's the new Mahomes to Kelsey.
Kind of. Chain mover. How do you stop it,
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's coming. We've seen it, with like Stafford to Cooper Kupp. So, you know where the ball's going, and they move them around, and you still can't stop it.
They still get 15 targets and catch 11 or 12 of them, every game.
And then all of a sudden, here's Jahmyr Gibbs with a big run, and you're like, gosh, okay, we can't cover up all of this.
And tackling Montgomery's getting really old, and Penny Sewell's pushing me around, and
I was going to say the NFC West got tighter, but actually got a little looser because they were all within half of a game with each other before this week. But now the Rams beating the Seahawks and the Cardinals win. The Cards lead the West at 5-4. The Rams jump above the Niners and the Seahawks at 4-4. Niners had a bye week there at 4-4. The Seahawks losing to the Rams in overtime on Sunday are now 4-5, and the Seahawks are now in last place in the NFC West. And it was a 26-20 win for the Rams over the Seahawks. Obviously, the big plays in this game happened in overtime with the Rams defense holding the Seahawks on a 3rd and 1, and then a subsequent 4 and 1, and then get the ball back, and Matthew Stafford doing his thing and finding Demarcus Robinson for the touchdown in overtime to seal it. 26-20 Rams over the Seahawks. Real quick note here on this one from Geno Smith. So Geno Smith started his post-game press conference by apologizing to his teammates and the city of Seattle. Says they put trust in him to make good decisions, and the ones he made today affected the team negatively and cost them the game. So Geno Smith putting it all on himself and thinking the turnovers cost him. And when you saw the first half of this game, the Rams couldn't get anything going. It was, I think, 13-3 at halftime. And I thought it was going to be over, and the Seattle Seahawks at home were going to run away with it. And they allowed the Rams back in, partially 3 interceptions from Geno Smith.
Yeah, I think there's some good to take away from Seattle, that they stopped the run pretty much start to finish. I thought the defense played quite well overall. Jackson Smith and Jigba went insane without Metcalf there. I mean, a breakout party for him. But I agree with Smith that the turnovers were crucial in a really, really tight, evenly matched game. That's always going to be the difference. And I still think Seattle's offensive line is highly problematic. And I'm not sure that's getting fixed anytime soon.
Their offensive line was horrible.
Yeah,
it was absolutely awful. And the rookies really showing up. And that's kind of that was the, I think, the good matchup for the Rams with this, is because I think the Rams back 7 is where they really lack, but their front 4 can get after the quarterback. And when you see someone like Braden Fisk, for example, who's gotten a lot of pressures in the last few weeks, and we've talked about how Jared Verse might be defensive rookie of the year right now in the NFL, and they've got high motors and they keep coming and keep coming. And the Seattle Seahawks did not do a good enough job blocking those guys up front. And by the way, so Braden Fisk, I think, is, my question about him was as a run defender, not as a pass rusher in the NFL. But he's making good on that pass rush part of things. And he ranks amongst, in the last 2 weeks, according to Pro Football Focus, he's 3rd in pressures with 9 amongst interior defensive linemen. He's 2nd in sacks, and he's top 10 in pass rush win rate. And there were plays in this game where, the offensive lineman guard on Braden Fisk hits him, knocks him back, and it's like, cool, I blocked him, he's done. And then it's like looking for other work. And Braden Fisk is like, well, I'm not done rushing. And then he just, the motor keeps going, and he gets back there. So it's like good on Fisk, but also bad on the offensive line. I think that combination of things is, we always talk about the playmakers and the fantasy aspects of things, but clearly the Seattle Seahawks lost this game in the trenches with their offensive line versus the Rams' young defensive line.
100%. You said that well. I totally agree.
Taking a look at the rest of the games here from Week 9.
Real quick, you just touched on Bears Cardinals. I just want to give two notes on that. Yeah, I mean, I think that the Bears and Caleb Williams, to me, are a year away. They were a good story. They'll probably flash again, but compared to the other rookie quarterbacks, I think he's struggling. And good for the Cardinals. I mean, they just ran all over them. I mean, they didn't even ask Kyler to do anything. I think he threw like 19 or 20 passes in this game. So physical, well-coached team in Arizona, but I mean, still lacking talent, but impressive showing.
Well-coached team, they're fine on offense. Like their build is ready to go on offense, right? And you're going to get more rapport there from Kyler Murray to Marvin Harrison Jr. But they're looking good there. They're well-coached. The defense is playing a little bit above where I think their talent is right now. Will that hang on for them? Will they be able to hold on and win the West and go win playoff games with the way they're currently built? I don't think so. I still think they're a year away there, probably. But they've done a great job and have been better in all regards, especially on the defensive side of the ball, than I thought. And in this game specifically, ran all over the Bears. And I thought that's where the Bears might have had the advantage, was on their defense. And the Cards said, no, you don't have an advantage there. And they whooped them 29-9.
But these could be playoff teams next year.
And I think they're both like in the middle zone where I think the Bears could beat them if they, got them in Chicago in a couple of weeks, right? And I don't think they're that far apart necessarily, but it was important for the Cardinals to prove, look, we maybe belong in a different category. And the Bears right now are probably telling us, look, there's too many teams ahead of us in this division. And, we're working towards something, but we're not there yet.
Could they trade Keenan Allen? I don't think that's where they're at, but
the Chargers could use Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Yeah, I think
we'll see.
You also want to help out your young player, and you're in it, and you're 500. I think some of these teams like the Bears and even the Colts, who I think are kind of listless right now. Yeah. And the Colts lost to the Vikings 21-13. The Colts are 4-5. I don't believe the Colts are going anywhere. You probably don't. They got to go back to Anthony Richardson at some point. I think they probably should be sellers more than buyers. But I think when you're at 500 or near 500, it's kind of a tough decision for you to say, we're going to start trading away pieces, even though we're in the hunt for a playoff spot.
It's a tough situation. Would they trade DeForest Buckner or something like that? I don't know. So quickly on that one, the Colts also scored on defense. Their offense basically did nothing. I don't know if Richardson would have created more than 6 offensive points or not, but it might be time to try that sooner than later.
Yeah.
And the Vikings get back on track. They're 6-2 and they're playing well. That's a good football team.
Vikings were a better team at home. Darnold, threw an early pick, didn't matter, came back. They're a better team. They're at home and they beat the Colts and didn't feel, even though the scoreboard was close for a lot of this game, it didn't feel like the Colts were just going to go hammer the Vikings. And your point, I think, is perfect with this. It was like, okay, well, the point of Joe Flacco is you can be more competitive, and the offense wasn't good. So what's the point of that?
Yeah, how much longer are we going to stick with that? And I know it's a really difficult defense to play against, and Richardson may have looked worse than he ever has. I don't know, but he only scored 6 points.
All right, a whole lot more to get to, and I think it's intervention time for me, Matt. And I need you to help me as we go through the rest of the season to not make the same mistake I made when we were making picks for the Week 9 games. We'll get to that next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Well, our sponsor at Hillsdale College is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including history, economics, great works of literature, the rise and fall of the Roman Republic. And did you remember studying these things in school? Even if you did study them, do you remember them? Probably not. And even if you did, maybe it's time for a refresher. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they have not changed the basics and our history. So all of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever, tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. The final segment of today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Get ready to tackle the NFL action on FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. Love the live in-game betting at FanDuel. You can find tons of props every single week on the NFL, season-long bets, rookies of the year, coaches of the year, who the next coach is that's going to be fired, landing spots for trade partners at the NFL trade deadline, NFL draft props as well is one of my favorites, and that'll last all the way through next April at FanDuel. NBA season, NHL season going as well. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get in on all that action. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Matt, the next time I try to put my support and put my picks behind the Cleveland Browns, I want you to reach through the computer and slap me and remind me that in both of our lifetimes, the Browns have been trash. They are currently trash, and they will continue to be trash for the rest of eternity. And I declared that the Jameis Winston Browns were back and that they were going to thump the Chargers, and they were at home and getting points, and it was quite the opposite. And it wasn't even as close as the 27-10 score. The Chargers just kind of sunned the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. 27-10 was the final. The Chargers now 5-3 in a really good spot in that AFC playoff race. The Browns falling to 2-7, back to where they were in the Watson days just 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, throwing picks, taking sacks. I mean, generating nothing. A very Harbaugh-like outing for the Chargers, just dominant physically. Maybe it doesn't look like it on the scoreboard, but it's a 17-point win that might as well have been 40 because it was never a contest. Herbert's playing really, really well, and I think the Chargers are firmly in the top 7 in the AFC.
And probably buyers.
Yeah, go get a receiver. Browns, you could get anybody you want from them.
The Browns have to sell. Yeah. The Browns are. We'll talk about this a little bit more tomorrow. But
that's a tomorrow show. But
who's in the worst spot? The Browns, the Saints, the Panthers, right? Like which job?
They're all horrible.
If you were given the GM role, which one would you want to take? Because none of them are in a good spot right now.
No, I can't imagine any of those teams being reasonably good next year.
No. The Atlanta Falcons defeat the Dallas Cowboys 27.
Raiders are bad too, by the way.
What's that?
Raiders are pretty bad too.
Raiders are in that conversation for sure. Yeah, those 4 teams. Much rather,
much rather be the Patriots or the
Patriots.
Titans.
I was just gonna say that the Titans, even though the Titans defeated the Patriots, I think it's one of those where it's a win-win for the Patriots when they lose, but they're competitive with their young quarterback and keep that development going. 20-17 win for the Titans over the Patriots. Both those teams now with 2 wins. Titans 2-6 have had their bye. The Patriots 2-7. How many 2-win teams now are there in the NFL? It feels like there's 10 of them.
It does, and majority of them deserve it. Basically, there's different levels of putrid, but a lot of Pollard, a lot of Ridley, and Patriots have none of those type of guys.
Yeah, the Patriots might continue to sell, although apparently guys like Godchaux and Duggar are not available from the Patriots, but there are some players that still are available.
Ramondre Stevenson, good outing by him. If we're looking for positives, Drake May and Ramondre Stevenson.
Great catch in the end zone from Drake May finding time, using his athleticism and throwing a touchdown pass. And you don't see the running backs making those types of contested catches usually, but that was a nice play for the Patriots in the loss. The Dallas Cowboys aren't far off from some of those 2-win teams. They're 3-5 now, losing to the 6-3 Atlanta Falcons 27-21. Cowboys are in trouble.
These teams are just going totally different directions. I'm buying the Falcons more and more. London, amongst other big names, didn't get you anything in fantasy and could be out for a while. Who knows? Dallas, I think, is dig a grave. I mean, it's over.
Yeah, I mean, it's over for the Cowboys this year. They don't look good. Bill Belichick might be the next coach there. We'll find out. Although I think there's going to be teams like the New York Giants that are calling Bill Belichick too, as the Giants are another one of those 2-win teams, 2-7. They fall to the Washington Commanders, who just continue to roll 27-22. The final there. The Commanders now climbing to 7-2 on the season.
Pretty competitive game though. The Giants have played the Commanders tough now. I mean, they actually beat them early in the season, or they should have beat them. They didn't have a kicker, and they've done good things. They ran the ball well. They couldn't get any pressure. But what I saw out of this game, and I'm going to study it more because Steelers play Washington this week, was highly efficient Washington offense. They didn't ask a ton out of Jaden Daniels, but he was highly efficient, high EPA, high success rate on the ground and through the air. They have a good offensive line too. I mean, he was not pressured against great pass rush. That's
I think, been one of the biggest keys for the Washington. It's kind of underreported because of Jaden Daniels and what he's doing, but they did a good job. I think there was 0 pressures from the big players up front from the New York Giants defensive line, and that's where the Giants have been most competitive, is being good up front on that defensive line. It's the one thing they've been able to hang their hat on this year.
And this was their highest blitz percentage of the year, the Giants. So they couldn't get home as they usually do, and they're bringing pressure, and still they held up well. Promising for Washington.
Yet another 2-win team in the NFL as the Miami Dolphins fall to 2-6, losing just barely. A last-minute field goal there, a 61-yarder from Tyler Bass. 30-27, the 7-2 Bills defeat division rival 2-6 Miami Dolphins.
Highly competitive game. I mean, this was one of the best 8 games of the year. But at 2-6, could the Chargers, Steelers, whoever, pry away Waddle or Tyreek? You know, I mean, I think that's interesting. These are tomorrow conversations.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Buffalo beats a desperate divisional foe and business move. You know what I mean? Like, Josh Allen just threw short. Okay, if you're going to – I'm not going to push the ball down the field. We're going to eat up clock and play it that way. Dolphins still are not featuring Waddle all that much. I mean, everything's going to a Chan. Either throwing it short to him or hand it to a Chan. I mean, it's okay,
Hill,
but
yeah, Hill's like 4 catches. Waddle, I think, had nothing until the very end
long
of the
time.
game.
Yep.
And
Jonu's getting more.
Even with the last couple of weeks of Tua getting back, it's just not quite that same offense we expected to see this year. And Tyreek Hill, I think the big thing here, he just redid his contract over the offseason. So
so did Waddle.
I think it's like a $40 million cap hit. But otherwise, it's like, okay, let's build around Waddle in the future and Tyree can get a pick back and do this thing again next year. But I'm not sure if there's anything to be done for the Dolphins. I think they just have to kind of just play the year out.
That's my hunch too, is we'll tweak some things in the offseason. We'll run back the same formula. And if it doesn't work, I'll get fired,
Ravens thumped the Broncos 41-10. And the 6-3 Ravens now still, the team we expected. Another ho-hum 100-yard, 2-touchdown game from Derrick Henry. Zay Flowers was big in this one, 127 receiving yards, a couple more touchdowns. And so you can start doing the math on where all those touchdowns started to come from. Lamar, 3 touchdown passes in this game, and just way too much for the Denver Broncos to handle. The Broncos are kind of in that Cardinals-Bears territory. We're like, okay, they're a competitive team, good story, not there yet, and not a team I expect to make waves and win games in January.
I'm kind of expecting the Bengals to pass them in that top 7 in the next couple of weeks here. This was more about the Ravens to me. I mean, that when they get up on you, 24-10 at the half, good luck coming back against them, against that run game. But they didn't even ask Lamar to run all that much. I mean, they just kind of showed he had a perfect passer rating in this game, which I don't love passer rating, but that just means you played pretty darn good. Yeah. And it was traditional drop back. If that's what you're going to give us, we're just going to let him throw like every other quarterback. And now we went on and got Deontay Johnson to help that, So I don't know how you stop this offense.
Oh, they're in a great spot. Even though they've had a couple, like when we look back at the season, like how did they lose to the Browns and they lost to the Raiders too, right?
Yeah, Raiders and Browns.
What the heck? How does that happen with how good this Ravens team looks? So they're not unbeatable, which is why they're not number 1 in my power rankings. But yeah, this is one of those teams where like, we're better than you, so we're gonna lean on you. And this game's not go well.
The offense is dynamite.
The last one here, we got through all of them, and it is the Philadelphia Eagles, who did get by the Jaguars a little closer in the second half than I think people expected, and it looked like the Eagles were going to run away with it. 28-23 was the final here. Yet another 2-win team with the Jacksonville Jaguars falling to 2-7, 0-5 on the road. The Philadelphia Eagles at 6-2 now, in a really good spot in the East, and especially in those wild card standings. And the big takeaway from this game was just the ridiculous look. It only got him 2 more yards, but some of the funnest 2 yards I've seen in my lifetime watching the NFL as Saquon Barkley did the reverse hurdle move, doing the splits and jumping over a defender. Just phenomenal stuff. 27 carries for 159 yards and a touchdown, by the way, for Saquon in this game.
Him and the guy we just mentioned, Henry, are like the best free agent additions in the whole league. I mean, they are massive difference makers. He looks like he's at Penn State. I mean, just in terms of speed and agility and all that. And he has to be loving life. I thought Hurts played well. Philly's in a good spot too. I mean, the A.J. Brown injury sounds like it's not serious. When he got hurt, it did slow them down a little bit. I mean, he's extremely important to that team. But I kind of think the Jags are. We opened the show with coaching firings. Might we open tomorrow's show with the Jags? I mean, they seem like the next one up to me. I mean, it's been a hot seat. Lawrence started really bad and then looked good in the second half, but it's way too up and down, and their weapons are really short right now too. Trade your left tackle, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the Jaguars are clearly in sell mode. I think you're probably, if you're Trent Baalke right now, you're trading for draft picks that somebody else is going to use, and Doug Peterson's seat probably has to be the hottest. And I think that can kind of lead into tomorrow's show. We've now hit all the games from Sunday. Of course, we'll cover Chiefs and Buccaneers as well from Monday Night Football on tomorrow's episode of Peacock and Williamson. And of course, we'll do our post trade deadline mailbag as well. So as things happen this week, and it will be a very interesting week in the NFL world and really the entire world and country. It's other things happening.
Yeah, other things are happening tomorrow too, I think. Yeah.
It's not just the NFL trade deadline on Tuesday. At BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Drop a question or a comment on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe while you're there. And Matt and I will be back with you tomorrow right here. Peacock and Williamson.